All right, and we're live. Welcome back, everybody. Episode five? Five? Yes, episode 5 of the PEO Speedwagon podcast. And again, you may notice slightly new setting, a little bit of upgrades each time, but your same host, Rick and Ryan. Ryan, welcome to our 5th episode.
Thanks.
Yeah,
we're trying out different scenes and setups and lighting, so this is experiment number 5.
Yeah, 2 lamps and some natural lighting. So I think we're looking pretty good in this one.
Yeah. Well, we've been told natural lighting, it's not going to fix the issue.
Yes,
but it's going to help.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I've been told I had a face for radio, so we're getting things lit well and doing the best we can with what we have.
Right. Yeah. Next episode, we'll come back and just pitch black.
It'll just be pitch black. Yeah. It'll just be a pure podcast, no video.
After dark.
PEO Speedwagon after dark.
In the dark.
What really happens when you speak with PEOs? Yeah.
Right.
Well, this episode, we are talking a little bit about the process of starting to work with a PEO and one of the biggest hurdles maybe for switching a PEO, which is the data gathering part of it.
Yeah.
And, I've been in sales roles in the past, and getting information, getting data is always part of it. But in this one, in PEO sales, it seems like the largest hurdle. I mean, there's so much information, so many documents and things that you need. And so we really today want to talk about best practices for getting that information and making it as smooth as possible. And I kind of want to ask you as well, what have you noticed in your time in the PEO space? What do the best reps do to make that an easy solution?
Yeah. No, it's really important. I mean, especially given the time of the year, we're just now getting past, sales incentive trips and president's clubs and sales conventions or all hands meetings. And now people are, back in the offices running their initial discovery calls. And the byproduct of any good discovery call is, one, that you have a prospect that is interested in your PEO. Mm-hmm. And 2, so much so that they're willing to start collecting the necessary data for you.
Yeah.
It's a fairly big litmus test. If someone wants to give you the data, that means that, they're certainly interested in pursuing this process to get an understanding of how your PEO is going to make a difference in their lives, but also what is it in fact going to cost. Mm-hmm. And the best PEO reps do 2 things. One, they set really good expectations about what needs to be gathered, because frankly, nothing is worse than when a PEO rep kind of goes through this, I need, one more thing. This is the last thing, like right out of the Jerk in 1979, like this is the last thing I need.
Oh, yeah, Steve Martin.
Yeah, Steve Martin. So I'm surprised you knew that one. So you don't get many of my references. So setting good expectations so the prospect can organize, like, okay, this is what I'm going to get through, need to get through from a data collection standpoint to get to where I want to go is really important. And when they kind of have that last thing I need mentality, they kind of get, the frustration starts to build right there. The nagging event of the sales process begins. The second thing is that a good PEO consultant or advisor or sales rep explains to them why they need the stuff. Not just like that I need it, but why? What is it intended to do? How does it help me develop the pricing model correctly? How does it actually establish kind of a foundation for the pricing for the entire time that you're going to, that customer will work with your PEO? Because oftentimes that is not really given to the business owner or decision maker to understand why they need to give this stuff and what it in fact is going to do for them. And the people who are the best at this really do a good job of both of those things.
Yeah. And I mean, we kind of joke sometimes when you're in the call, it's like, we've only been talking here for 15 minutes. We've only been talking here for 29 minutes, but I'm about to ask you for all of the information that we need to do this. And it's usually, paperwork after paperwork.
Yeah. And it's intrusive stuff.
It's intrusive stuff.
People's salaries, it's the ages of their employees, sometimes the ages of their dependents. We've been friends here all of 27 minutes. And now I really want to dig into what is largely really personal stuff. So you really do have to connect the dots for them.
And I think conveying that empathy too, because you do this so many times and have those conversations around PEOs and this data gathering, it can almost be a little robotic.
Yeah.
And you almost forget that you should ask that permission to ask for all these things, or kind of let them know, here's what I need. It will be, taken care of in the highest standards possible as well.
Yeah. I think that's important. There's a lot of, now where we are in the accessibility of technology to get data across in a secure way, that's one thing. But when you are collecting data at a customer site, like they're printing things out, I think it's also really important to convey not only what you're going to do with this, but how you're going to dispose of it and protect them. So, whether, you're going to be shredding this information, whether you're going to be providing it back to them in the hard copy forms once you've made, digital copies. I think for some of our customers now living in the world that we do, and you're dealing with such delicate information, that it's important to also convey what you're going to do with it. It makes your customer feel like you can empathize and understand that, they're stepping out a little bit to help provide this information to you.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You had mentioned the jerk and one more thing.
Yeah.
Is that inevitable though? Is there so much information requested that you're going to have to get 90% of it and then pick up the other 10% by asking along the way?
It can be. I think that's important to know. When you look at the fingerprint of a particular type of organization, they, if they're, in the smaller end of the small, medium-sized business spectrum, let's say 12, 15 employees, they have one healthcare plan, they work in an office environment where risk and safety is not a big factor in the consideration, then it should be really a handful of things, and they should be fairly static from one deal to the next. But then when you get into companies and you find out things like, oh, okay, they have a number of people on Cobra, or they have a level funded plan, and now that initial list has to expand in order to get to the right data to, again, establish that long-term pricing model, not just the short-term.
Yeah.
You will have to gather more information. And so I think that all comes back, though, to setting good expectations. Like, as you're gathering it, explain to them the circumstances and really hopefully through a good discovery of learning how they're managing all their HR benefits and different things that you're kind of advising them at the right time. Okay, that's going to cause me to acquire this information. You're doing that. But if you're not, setting an expectation like, hey, 90% of what I need is going to fall into this bucket here, and we're going to get most of that stuff done here today.
Yeah.
If there are additional things that come back, whether from our underwriting or risk assessment group that we will need, I will work with you to get those things. But what I promise you is I will minimize the times that I've got to come back to you.
Yeah. And you said that up front, not
right.
You don't just come back later to say, hey, our team found something and we need to dig in more. You had mentioned, that there's this long-term pricing, short-term pricing that jumped out at me. When I think of the data collection, should you almost be like weary if a PEO says they only need a few things? Because it seems like they might not be getting the full picture to properly quote you. Is that true?
I don't know that I'd be worried about it if I'm a consumer, if I can understand why this is what's needed.
Okay.
Right. So if I'm a 15-person office environment, no risk, we've been on healthcare with one carrier for 5 years, the past 5 years, we're not up against a renewal. Like, just if your advisor can explain why this information is what you need, then I wouldn't be worried about it. Because they're just they don't want to have to get more than they need to, but they also don't want to get less because they certainly don't want to have to keep coming back to you. It's just that the more information that is relevant to assessing the overall risk profile of the organization, from a health, from a workers' comp, from understanding what your current SUI rates are, and the things therein that you need to assess from a taxes perspective. Like, the fact, if you can get all of that and get some history on the medical, like, that's the thing that has the most influence on the pricing, frankly, to look forward. That gives a PEO the ability to assess the entire environment, what the usage has been on the medical, establish what I like to refer to as the right price, like the price that you should be at, leveraging the buying power of the PEO, and not way down here to buy your business, because eventually we're going to have to get back up here at some point.
Right.
And utilizing that as a platform for 3-5 years and beyond of pricing consistency. That's really important. And that's what makes people want to stay with PEOs, because that's what they bought into at the beginning, was that if I move into this infrastructure with big company buying power and all these resources, that I'm going to have a very consistent rate of increase on these different insurance programs. And that's what I want. I don't need it to be super low now just to justify it. I need it to be priced aggressively, given the significant buying power you have at XYZ PEO.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to then just kind of follow through on what you quite frequently tell me is, we're low single-digit increases. Well, just keep me there. Price me so I can stay there, because then I can budget and plan for that as I grow and scale.
Yeah, you want to have the security in the pricing where it's predictable. It's predictable.
That's what they want. I mean, and a PEO has the power to provide that to a small to medium-sized business owner, which is unparalleled in its importance. You are giving me predictability as to how the cost environment will be for this. The second largest expense I have is relates to employer, the health insurance, that I can grow on. It's a platform I can run on. And I value that predictability, because me as a small to medium-sized business owner myself, there's enough unpredictable stuff that I can't account for.
Yeah.
So if you can offer me predictability, I'd rather have that than you just bottoming out your pricing model that your underwriters are going to have to get back up at some point to justify it.
You know, that first year or the second year, and it's going to be a jump at some point.
Yeah, it's the worst.
So help me understand, I guess, when we're looking at all these different PEOs and people are considering them, it's not as easy as just the rep sets good expectations and then they all go through the same data collection process. They all have different data collection processes.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about everything that they have to collect and what the best ones do and what the worst ones do and what that looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, the basic data is, obviously the census or the payroll register. Right. So something that's going to give you all the names and job titles and ages and approximate salaries and incomes, and whether they're biweekly or semi-monthly. So kind of that census data collection that really kind of gives you, the footprint of all the employees and demographic data. Yeah. Then you're going to want to understand, and from that, obviously, information's going to kind of roll out of that, like taxes and what your work comp codes are and what the correlating rate per 100 is against what you're paying them. So like you start to fill in the gaps of the pricing model on the PEO side. 2 is the healthcare data, right? So you're going to want to gather the summary of benefits or the healthcare plan designs, or what do you give an employee when they start at your company, Rick? Like what's the onboarding packet that's got the healthcare and the dental and how much they pay for it? Like something like that gives you a look of, what the healthcare environment is around the insurances. Yeah. And then recent medical billing. So when I got into the world of PEO, 17, 18 years ago, we didn't ask for that. Like we wanted it because that would help us build a cost equation, but that was never a part of the underwriting equation. Okay. Now, and certainly while I was, 5-6 years later, that became a part of it. Is we want to see what your current rates are to not only one, determine what the appropriate discount is or that right price, but also to gauge participation. Do you have people on the plan? Do you not? And if you didn't gather that, you really had no way of knowing. So that's helped refine the pricing model, and you still certainly need that today. If you're approaching a renewal, the underwriters are certainly going to want to look at what the renewal is, which is always tricky. And that's a part where expectation setting comes in really important. So typically, and they vary again by PEO, if you are inside 90 days of that company's current healthcare renewal, whether it's with a PEO or whether it's just an open market plan.
Okay, so you just renewed and then within the next 90 days.
No, if you're approaching a renewal.
Oh, okay, if you're approaching it.
If you are inside 90 days of your renewal date that's out there in the future, they want to see your renewal. So you as a PEO consultant got somebody really interested, goes, this is great, but now I can't price you because you don't have your renewal yet, but you're inside of 90 days, and now you got to call your broker, and you got to alarm your broker that you're looking at a PEO where he or she is certainly going to get a little worrisome about that, and protective and not necessarily helpful in getting you what you need. Yeah. So that's a part that PEO reps have got to manage. That can be better managed if you're setting good expectations. And that can come when you're working with PEO to say, hey, it might be advantageous for us to do this now before you enter that cycle. Or if you're in this cycle, let me start to coordinate demos and things like that, because right now you don't have your renewal and you say you have a meeting with your broker in 2 weeks where he or she are going to provide it. Well, let's get some of this work out of the way that we can't really do now until you get that pricing. And so I think that, that kind of transparency and understanding of what they're about to go through really does help people. But that's a tangent.
That sounds almost like something though that a seasoned PEO rep would do.
Right.
Okay. That sounds like something
they do and they should, but I think that's where you can obviously, if you're at a PEO, you can lean on other PEO reps who are a little more tenured if you're not exactly sure how to navigate it. Or you can come to PEO, you can come to the PEO Speedwagon podcast and learn through things.
Yeah. Yeah, pick up the tips on how to do it here, and you can become a veteran rep in 20 minutes a day.
Right.
20 minutes every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
We
yes.
can't do it.
Not 20 minutes a day.
Yeah. I don't have that much content.
No.
No. So, I mean, you gather the healthcare information, the pricing, so you can get that to underwriting, and then you gather information on the workers' comp. Again, we talked about the work comp codes, but what the scheduled operations or the deck sheet has, and has the experience modifier and the rate per 100s on all the different codes in different states. And you need to gather all of that. And I think it's important to recognize this stuff is not readily available. It's not always easy. It's not back in the days when I used to go in an office and the work comp binder was like right over the business owner's desk and they could just grab it and pluck it out.
Yeah.
Now it's embedded in all sorts of documents and everything else. And so helping somebody to find that is really important.
Yeah.
And then, different PEOs do require different things, especially if your customer is already with a PEO. There's specific reports, there's certain documents, there's, that they want to see, because you don't always get as clear a picture of these costs when they're in a PEO versus whether they're out of it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So, and can the data collection process be completely different if they're with a PEO than not in a PEO?
Yeah.
I guess it's just how it's organized and
how it's organized, how it's underwritten, what the philosophy is. Yeah, it's all very different.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And now, of course, part of the reason we do what we do is that we can help people when they're going through that transition or that process so that their expectations are set correctly.
Right.
And regardless of the PEO's data collection process, we can actually sort of increase the quality of it if it needs to be up to our standard. And that's something, I've certainly witnessed you do as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we can intersect. We can recognize and sit alongside a prospective customer who wants to go through a PEO evaluation and do what best PEO reps do, which is set really good expectations, explain why this information is really important to get to the PEO, how it's going to serve their long-term strategy and getting them to that right price. And, so we are really diligent about doing that. That's inherent to our process, explaining all that. But then also we have kind of, we know the back doors on how to get to this information, right? Whether it's in one PEO system or not, or whether it's one healthcare structure or not, like we know how. We've kind of unlocked the process of how to gather that data. And we're also really diligent about doing it with our customers. I think too often nowadays, we talked about it, like there's secure ways to send data. But I think too often people leave those meetings and say, okay, I'm going to send you a list and you send me a bunch of stuff. We avoid that at every opportunity. Obviously, that's easier when we're working face-to-face with a customer, but we've also set up additional calls where we hop into Zooms and kind of go through a screen share and help them get all that stuff if we can't do that literally face-to-face, either because distance made it so or just the prospect's time to do that. But I think sharing in that search is really important. And it cuts down on the frustration of, okay, I just sent this off to Ryan. Oh, no, it's not the right document. Now it's this. It kind of feels a lot like when you go through getting a mortgage or, all that just process of guessing if this is the right thing or not. We kind of take the guessing game out of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's even been times too when we've requested information and you've called the PEO to say like, do we really need this one piece that you keep looking for? And they kind of come to the conclusion, no, we actually didn't need it. And you're like, okay, well then we're going to work with what you have. Yeah. We don't necessarily need that extra piece.
Yeah.
And let's move forward from here.
Yeah. Imagine how frustrating that is to a customer.
Yeah.
If they were ever to find that out, like, oh, I really didn't have to get that to you.
Yeah. But yet I got 3 emails about getting it over right away.
Yes. Exactly. So yeah, we've certainly been able to advocate for our customers on things that they don't necessarily need and don't serve a purpose, or we can tell them if they really do need it, we can apply that insight as to why.
Yeah. Awesome. Terrific. Well, I would say if you don't want to be asking for, the one more thing constantly and be the Steve Martin, set clear expectations and go in with intention of what you need and make sure that it's very clear the reason behind everything that you're asking for. Yeah. Anything else you'd add to that?
No, that is exactly right. I think it's just also recognizing what you're doing to your customer at that point in time, even when you're doing it well.
Yeah.
that customer is excited about your PEO or the prospects of what PEO can do for their business. They just had an exciting conversation with you. Their interest is climbing. What we refer to as law of interest over time. It's at its highest point so far.
Law of interest over time.
Yeah. And then you inevitably start to ask for data and kind of give them homework and tasks.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it. We're not saying that there's a workaround. That is what the underwriting groups need in order to do this correctly. But have empathy for that. That's not the most fun thing they're going to do.
And that it's personal data.
And that it's personal data, and it can feel intrusive. And you've only been friends now all of 41 minutes, and that the ability to empathize and kind of put your walk in their shoes on that, I think is really important. So if you can demonstrate that, that's going to help. And then also just advocate with them, because at that point in time, their interest is going down. Nobody is getting more excited about PEO when they're funneling through all the reporting junk that you have to in order to get a PEO price model. So I think that that's really important to understand and provide resources and support around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Terrific. Well, thanks everybody for tuning into this one. I think it was a great episode.
Yeah.
And
fun with data.
Fun with data. That'll be the title. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. See y'all.